All right, let's jump into things. It is 18 past 12 on Friday, 27th of March. And I'll start off with the dollar here because the recovery on this has been quite sort of strong in that. It's been a real sort of odd sort of week for for everything in the markets, but for the dollar particularly, because we seem to be getting these sort of like headlines from Trump at the end of the US sessions, which, have been sort of seeing risk spike, but it's becoming less and less, as in the market believes it less and less each time. It's like, hey, boom. And as you can see, it like, here's where we had it now. This was obviously, I think, the other day as well. As you can see, they're all at 7 o'clock. Where was it? Maybe. I can't remember where the other one was. Anyway, beside the point. The thing is, at the moment, I think this is one of those sort of ones that we had here. Something sort of happening. But anyway, beside the point, the market sort of is starting to sort of go, yeah, champion it, and then they're like, oh, hold on, wait. There's all this sort of speculation at the moment. Now, this is the big question. Do we believe? Like, I know you'll get sort of complete sort of insane sort of Trump hater sort of people saying, can't believe a word he says. And then, you'll just got to go off what the market's doing. And like, is the market reacting to it? And that's what I sort of say, does the market believe it or not? And you can see these sort of moves. Overall, they keep buying it up. So dare say they don't believe it. But they give it a shot each time. As you can see, it's sort of like, whoop, shot down. Um, but we are still sort of moving up to the top side here. So anyway, look, I thought this was probably going to be enough. This sort of sell down here. We had this, I think it was Monday, wasn't it? And we got absolutely sort of, well, it got clobbered to the downside there. But obviously it's drifted all the way back up over here, almost about sort of 78% retracement of this move. Actually, touch over 78% of that retracement, though. Now we are sort of coming into what would be a bit of a falling resistance, confluence with this big high time frame resistance area. And if we on this one at the moment, we're on the 1 hour, we do have a bit of a negative divergence in these last two sort of kick ups here into these highs. So I think that's sort of like, for dollar longs at this particular 2 second moment might be a little bit iffy. Because as I can see, the RSI is just not really sort of showing a great deal of sort of buying pressure in these last two pushes here. And we are sort of seeing it sort of start to potentially have a little bit of a pushback down. I think sort of certainly in the short term, while you're above this sort of little short-term rising support, it's still potential to, like, you can't just say write it off. I mean, it's obviously very much in buy mode here. And coming into the weekend as well is going to be quite interesting. But excuse me, I do sort of see the potential for this to at least have a little bit of short-term weakness back down to sort of maybe sort of fill this wick down the bottom here, 99.75. I think underneath there might be a little bit interesting as to sort of what we're going to sort of see sort of coming into the weekend. So I'll put a little move along here. We can actually put an alert on this one here as well. So that's just filling that wick there. So at the moment, it does look like it may want to come down. Obviously, take out the bottom of this little wick here. It's where we are, sort of like, just coming into Asia. So I could see a little bit of short-term weakness in the dollar, but I think sort of, while it's still up in this area here, between these two levels at least, you got to sort of expect this thing will still be bought up. But it doesn't mean that you can't have a little bit of sort of shake and short-term weakness to the downside here while we see a bit of the flows come back into the metals. All right, tick along. We got gold. And gold has had that incredible sort of recovery through here. Try and sort of catch this sort of back test and hold of this sort of 4,500 level, which is obviously, if we carry this through, can see, apart from the fact that it's obviously sort of a large sort of round number, so it's got that sort of mental factor to it. We can see it's very much a pivotal point. Even that sort of retest sort of coming up here, a little bit shy, 44.80 or so, but pretty much where these body fills happened over here. So this is kind of the level that you want to sort of see what the market could potentially do with it. Now, short term, that's a sort of medium term look there, but short term in that we are sort of seeing, obviously, it's holding this 43.60 level here. it is setting up for itself a little bit of a potential break should it get back above 44.20. Yeah, look, 44.20, 44.25. If you do get above there now, obviously at the moment it does look like this, albeit very small. We do have slightly higher sort of lows coming in on the RSI here, which does actually give us, whoops, let's the other way here, does actually give us a small little sort of negative divergence, as we can see, sort of coming down into the lows through here. However, with these sort of things, where would this start from? Actually, this would be your first, and this is what I've been saying. It's really the negative divergence of really sort of going 2-3. We saw it with the dollar 2 seconds ago as well. Anyway, short term above 44.20. I think you could probably look for 44.60. Really gets interesting if it could get above 45. 4,500 is really where you go, okay, wow, okay, it's back on. But that's a bit of a long shot. I would say particularly probably more that is what you're looking for. Something up around that sort of 44.60 to 44.70, and then maybe a push back down. If we do get that, you've got a potential for an inverted head and shoulders, which obviously still gives upside as a potential. But again, we've got to see what's happening with the dollar. So maybe this could come off, as we can see, the dollar sort of come down a little bit, some flows come back into metals. Should this break through 44.25 or 20.25, and then we could sort of see it target the wick lows with the dollar and possibly come up around that 44.60 level before we sort of see sellers try to have another shot moving that back in there as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if we get something to this sort of effect on a break out through here, because it does take you out of this somewhat little channel that it has been sort of working on. But it's obviously a lot of work to do. It's a mad chop area, as you can see previously, and obviously through here as well. Cool. Moving on, we have silver, and silver's much larger potential for an inverted head and shoulders. I noticed this the other day, actually. We were up over here. This is where we sort of came into that resistance level. And this is very good as sort of indicator, sort of like, where were the sellers? Where were the sellers again? Bang. Unable to get that breakthrough there. So this is still a valid sort of price structure move, should it be able to sort of get through there. But same thing with gold. I noticed the other day, and again, this is just using sort of X as a bit of a barometer for things. But there was a lot of people saying, "Oh wow, I think gold's here, it's bottomed," and showing these charts of very basic levels of like a weekly chart, and here's a big wick down the bottom with a blue body. Well, for me, blue, but there's a positive bullish body on it, and it's like that's it. Like, yeah, bang, it's that simple. And I think this is why we've had these extra sort of little sort of shoot downs here, because these kind of things are basically just to sort of like wipe those people out. And anyway, point is potential for inverted head and shoulders setting up here. Really, the target 74. Above 74, it's going to get very interesting. You still have that sort of falling resistance to deal with. But you do have potential, even if you just don't like. Because I don't take the bodies, sorry, the wicks with these things. But that would be kind of your measured move on this. Should it play out, would be 84, which would absolutely rip a lot of these sort of shorts apart. Um, that's not exactly the sort of base case. That's like, for this to happen, obviously you need to get a break of this 74 level, backtest, boom, boom, through this falling resistance. And then we could sort of move on to that. But anyway, that's kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Short term, see it above 70, move up. 72 would be your target. Body fill of this big drop down here through yesterday, and sort of see what happens there. But I wouldn't be surprised, again, similar with gold, if we get some sort of little short term push up. If you get above 70, this level over here, the little direction thing gone, that we get something to this effect, and that's your kind of way forward. This is more just should price sort of get over there, something to this kind of effect. But that's forward thinking, and that's not the base case at this moment. So we are actually sort of just on that note, just sort of flick back quickly, because we are seeing, if you have a look at gold, we are seeing that push up. Which chart were we using? this one here, is pushing up into that sort of confluence here. Falling resistance, previous horizontal, does look like it may want to sort of continue and push up through here. 44.20 is obviously going to be the level for it to watch, and then maybe a little bit of a pop back test and move forward in there. But 44.60 seems like a reasonable topside target if we can get above that 44.20. What are you at? 44.15 now, so it is pushing forward, not too badly there. All right, let's tick on. So just before I do tick on, I'll have a quick look at gold. This is gold actually on a daily. If you have a look at this. Um, so this is predicated on us obviously getting a fairly decent rally above 4,500 or so. But if we look at the sort of structure of this thing sort of coming down, I noticed this before, but these two highs through here give us a pretty much almost to the dollar mark on a potential very, very wide sort of channel, which could be sort of forming there. So the channel's not really the main idea here, but what I could see, should we see a little bit of a squeeze here, because this, again, this is on the daily, it's very oversold. It is ticking up here a little bit. Structural wise, failure to sort of at this stage continue this move down here. So the emphasis comes back up onto 4,500, 45, 4,600, these kind of two levels through here. But a breakthrough there, I think, could potentially sort of a retest of the underside of this sort of channel here would be a sort of a nice little level, sort of up around that sort of 50% fib retracement for them sort of better sells through down here. I mean, of course, this is at this stage $200-300 off. So, it is a very sort of long shot kind of thing, but you've got to keep in mind, we did all obviously come down $1,000 in, a couple of days. So these are the kind of size of these swings that we are getting at the moment. So, it's not too far-fetched to think that should this thing latch on, should we see the dollar fail a little bit more and the flows go back into metals, that we could see a drift up over here. However, if we do get a test up over here, I think this is very much a very good sort of sell point to try and sort of get a better short coming down to the lows. But again, that's more sort of forward thinking kind of sort of stuff. That's, silver to 84. Maybe this is coming back up to, 4,700, that kind of thing with it all. Um, all right, let's tick along. Actually, in saying that, so if silver made it to 84, I think gold would recover a lot better than this. Have a quick look at Aussie. Aussie is absolutely getting slapped here. So, look, Aussie has been holding up very well, very strong, all through this sort of period here, while we've had the dollar have against big rallies and all this kind of stuff, mainly predicated on the idea that they had the sort of the RBA and the more hawkish central bank on side. That's what was sort of keeping Aussie a little bit higher. Now, we had CPI this week, and CPI sort of came in, it's still hot, but it was down a touch. And I think that has taken a little bit of the shine off the Aussie, um, where it's back to the point that it's actually acting kind of as it should, which is a risk proxy. And, with everything going on recently, it's very surprising to see that Aussie has been holding up as strong as it has. But now we're starting to see it sort of succumb to the downside here. We're actually back to January levels through this sort of sort of rising support through here as well. And as you can see, it's started to pick up a little bit of speed. Look, if we do see metals recover, I could see Aussie have one more sort of ditch up over here. But I think any sort of move back up towards 70 cents, I think that's going to be met with selling. And I wouldn't be surprised if that 67 is on the cards in the medium term. So yeah, I wouldn't be. Yeah, I mean, look, it's come down pretty hard. We are oversold. This is on the daily. Any sort of move up, sort of towards sort of like mid 69s, maybe if you could pop up towards 70 cents. But anywhere over here, I imagine this would be your kind of sort of sell zone for Aussie to then potentially be coming down to its target. All right, so I think that's just about it with it all. Yeah, we do have gold sort of coming through, testing 44.20 now as well. So that'll be interesting to see how that one pops through, 12.41. Couple of little things with this, is just as sort of points to note. I hate diamond tops, but this played out very well. this was a great indicator for it all. So look, as I said, I've tried to sort of chart these things out, 100 times. 99 of them that haven't worked. This one it has. However, if we have a look on the dollar, which I find quite interesting as well, maybe it's because you've seen it happen here once, and now you're like, okay, it'll happen everywhere. But if we have a look on the dollar at a lower time frame, so put on the 30-minute here. This is another thing that makes you sort of think that we could be seeing a little bit of downside here, because the way these things work is consolidation, big spike up and down, consolidation on the other side, and then it sort of starts to move down. So again, look, this is down onto the 30-minute here. So this is only very short term and that. And as I said, your target's really only 99.75. But it's just interesting to sort of see that these things are potentially sort of playing out. But these big sort of like wicks in the middle here, and then followed by more consolidation, it's just something to sort of watch out for. And obviously through this sort of rising support would be the bottom side of that kind of diamond. Again, I'm not a big fan of these things, but I guess it would be something to this sort of effect. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, I suppose I mean, where do you connect that like that? Like, maybe, whatever. The point is, the main three are really just this side here. This sort of potential sort of coming up over here, rising support. You can see sellers are moving down, and we saw they were moving up. Big spike, boom, boom, moving over here. Anyway, just something to note. No, nothing really too interesting. All right, that's it from me.